Welcome back, horror fans and cinephiles, to another thrilling episode of Real Talk Horror, the podcast where we dissect the spooky, the campy, the downright iconic from the world of cinema. I'm your host, Josh Bell, and today we're taking a detour into something a little different, still iconic, still Carpenter, but with a twist. That's right, folks. Grab your sunglasses, grab your green-eyed mystic vibes, and hold on tight, because we're diving headfirst into the neon-lit, action-packed martial arts meets fantasy adventure that only John Carpenter could pull off, 1986's Big Trouble in Little China. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, isn't Carpenter the guy who terrified us with Halloween and grossed us out in the best way possible with The Thing? Yes, absolutely. But Carpenter wasn't one to stay confined to one genre, and this movie is proof of just how versatile and adventurous he could be. Big Trouble in Little China takes everything you think you know about Carpenter, tosses it in a wok of fire and mysticism, and serves up something utterly unique. This isn't your typical Carpenter horror flick, and that's another thing that makes it special. It's a wild ride through mysticism, martial arts, and some of the quirkiest characters you'll ever meet. And of course, at the center of it all is Kurt Russell as Jack Burton, the everyman hero who's as clueless as he is charming. Seriously, Russell's performance in the movie is one of his best, and if you're a fan of his collaboration with Carpenter, you're in for a treat. We're kicking off Phase 4 of our Carpenter series with his cult classic. Now, I'll unpack the film for you, but first, let's set the stage. We're going to talk about where this film lands in Carpenter's legendary career, why it's a bit of an outlier, and what makes it a must-watch for anyone who loves bold, genre-bending cinema. So buckle up, whether you're a die-hard Carpenter fan or a newcomer looking for a good time, this episode has something for you. Let's dive into the world of Big Trouble in Little China. By the mid-1980s, John Carpenter was already a bit of a powerhouse, a master of tension and atmosphere who had redefined multiple genres within horror. Think about it, we had Halloween, he gave us the slasher blueprint, so effective still now. The Thing, he pushed the boundaries of practical effects and psychological horror, crafting a story as chilling as it was visually groundbreaking. An Escape from New York, where he proved he could create dystopian action with just as much grit and personality as his horror masterpieces. But then came Big Trouble in Little China. And let me tell you, this wasn't just a shift in gears. This was Carpenter flooring it in an entirely new direction. Suddenly, we're in a world where martial arts, mysticism, and sharp-tongued humor collide in a way that no one could see coming. It was as if Carpenter said, I've mastered scaring you. Now let me show you how much fun I can have doing something totally different. And yet, even in this bold departure, you can still feel Carpenter's fingerprints all over the film. The bold, almost cartoonishly vibrant visuals, pure Carpenter. The tight pacing that keeps you glued to the screen, classic Carpenter. And let's not forget Jack Burton, a reluctant, bumbling hero who somehow manages to carry the movie with sheer charm and bravado. That mix of charisma and chaos is something Carpenter loves to explore, and Kurt Russell delivers it here in spades. This may have been the most ambitious Carpenter film, taking risks, bending genres, and creating something that felt fresh, fun, and, as usual, ahead of its time. Didn't quite hit with audiences at first, but like much of his early work, it's grown into a beloved classic, and today we're going to dive into why it deserves every bit of its status. Let's kick things off by unpacking the story and seeing how Carpenter weaved together action, comedy, and a dash of mysticism into something that's a truly unforgettable and absolutely fun time. Alright, so let's dive into that wild ride that is Big Trouble in Little China. If you haven't seen it already, don't worry, this setup is spoiler free, though it might just nudge you to hit play as soon as we're done here. Or pause this now and go watch it. So, at the heart of the story, we've got Jack Burton, a wisecracking, larger-than-life truck driver with all the confidence in the world and just enough skill to back it up. Sometimes. Jack's the kind of guy who charges into every situation with his trademark bravado, whether or not he has any clue what's really going on. And trust me, in this movie, he definitely doesn't. Jack's simple life of delivering goods and spouting one-liners takes a hard left when his buddy, Wang Chi's fiancée, is kidnapped. But this isn't your typical damsel in distress scenario. No. Before Jack knows it, he's neck deep in a supernatural war, complete with ancient Chinese sorcery, epic martial arts battles, and villains so wild, they'll stick with you forever. You won't forget these guys. Now, what makes this movie so fun is how it throws you into this clash between the ancient and the modern. On one side, you've got century-old magical lore, mystic warriors, and mythical beings straight out of legend. And on the other, you've got Jack, with his denim jacket, big rig, and hilariously misplaced confidence, fumbling his way through a world he doesn't and couldn't even begin to understand. Big Trouble in Little China is about bravery, friendship, and what happens when two vastly different worlds collide. It's part martial arts epic, part comedy, part fantasy adventure, part monster movie, and somehow Carpenter manages to weave it all together into something cohesive and magical. But beneath all that action and humor, there's a surprising depth to this film. Carpenter again sneaks in themes of cultural identity, underdog rising against impossible odds, and even the nature of good versus evil. And the best part, he does it all with a wink and a smile. This isn't one of his darker, moodier films. It's not Prince of Darkness. Instead, it's lighter, cheekier, and designed to entertain in a way that feels downright joyous. And the characters? Well, we'll get into more detail later, but let me just say this. Jack Burton might not be the hero you expect, but he's definitely the one you'll remember. And Wang Chi, well, let's just say he's the unsung MVP of this story. Stick around for my take on that dynamic. Whether you're here for the action, the laughs, or just the spectacle of it all, Big Trouble in Little China has something for everyone. But trust me, we're only scratching the surface. Buckle up, because the deeper we go, the crazier and the cooler this all will get. Now let's peel back the curtain and talk about how Big Trouble in Little China came to life, a process that was just as ambitious and daring as the film itself. First off, we all know John Carpenter doesn't just direct. He immerses himself in every layer of his films, and this is no exception. As always, he was deeply involved in the soundtrack, collaborating once again with Alan Howarth to craft a score that perfectly mirrors the film's quirky, high-energy tone. Think about it. You've got mystical Chinese sorcery, martial arts, and Kurt Russell strutting around like he owns the place. What kind of music ties that all together? The answer? Synthesizers, rock-infused score. It's bold, it's unpredictable, just like the film. And Carpenter's music doesn't set the mood. It really expands everything around it. And then the casting, bringing Kurt Russell on board as Jack Burton was absolute genius. Russell takes a character who could easily come off as a bumbling fool and somehow makes him irresistibly charismatic. Jack isn't your typical hero. He's not particularly skilled. He doesn't understand half of what's happening. And let's be real, he's not even the real hero of the story. But Russell's ability to blend cluelessness with charm and comic timing makes Jack Burton unforgettable. And then there's James Hong as the villainous Lo Pan. If there's an actor who can make a 2,000-year-old sorcerer both menacing and hilariously eccentric, it is James Hong. Lo Pan is equal parts terrifying and theatrical, and Hong leans into every moment, stealing every scene he's in. His performance alone is worth the price of admission. And then Victor Wong as Egg Shen, Dennis Dunn as Wang Chi. Just every one of them brings something amazing and funny and iconic to the role. But making a film this big and bold had its challenges. With a budget of around $25 million, one of the larger for Carpenter at this time, it was one of his most expensive projects, and that money went into creating the film's stunning practical effects, elaborate set designs, and jaw-dropping action sequences. The underground layers, glowing mystical battles, and the larger-than-life monsters, all of it required meticulous planning and execution. Carpenter and his team had to push the boundaries of what was possible in the mid-'80s. Yet, despite their efforts, the pressure to deliver a box office hit was immense. And here's the heartbreaking part. The film didn't perform well on release. We've heard that before, haven't we? It struggled to find an audience amidst stiff competition and a studio that didn't quite know how to market it. Critics at the time didn't know what to make of it either. Was it an action film, a comedy, a fantasy? Again, the film was simply too ahead of its time to be neatly boxed into a single genre. But as we'll discuss a little later, Big Trouble in Little China has enjoyed a well-deserved re-evaluation in the years since. The groundbreaking visuals, unforgettable performances, and genre-defying storytelling have cemented it as a classic. A film that continues to inspire and entertain decades after its release. So the next time you watch it, take a moment to appreciate the ambition that went into making it. Carpenter and his crew weren't making a movie. They were creating something entirely unique, and that's no small feat in Hollywood. If you've seen any John Carpenter film, you know how unmistakable his style is. It's the kind of thing where even if you don't know he was the director, within a few scenes you'd be saying, this really feels like Carpenter. And that's Big Trouble in Little China. It's just Carpenter flexing his creative muscles in a way we hadn't quite seen before. First, the visuals. Carpenter's most recognizable trademarks is his masterful use of lighting. And this movie takes that to another level. Think about the vivid greens, the glowing reds, the ethereal blues. These colors don't just light the set, they set the mood. They make Lo Pan's lair feel alive, like it's pulsating with ancient energy. Carpenter uses lighting not just to enhance the supernatural elements, but to give them an otherworldly or dreamlike quality. It's bold and dramatic and 100% Carpenter. Then there's the pacing. This film moves, and I mean it moves. 1 minute you're laughing at Jack Burton's over-the-top bravado. The next, you're in the middle of a high-octane martial arts showdown or this tense mystical standoff. Carpenter has this incredible ability to weave action, humor, and suspense into a seamless flow. Nothing feels out of place. He knows exactly when to give us a breath and when to drop us into the chaos again. And yet, even with all its energy, the film never feels rushed. And that's the Carpenter magic again. He knows how to keep you engaged without overwhelming you. And then again, that music, because Carpenter's soundtracks deserve their own Hall of Fame. And the score for Big Trouble in Little China is quintessential Carpenter, blending his signature synthesizer-driven style with elements that reflect the film's unique East meets West vibe. You've got the pulsating synthesizer lines, but also hints of traditional Chinese instrumentation, creating a soundscape that really complements this fusion of cultures and genres. It's adventurous, it's quirky, and it's uniquely tied to the film, and it's impossible to imagine the story without it. But Carpenter's style isn't just about music or visuals. It's the way he tells the story. So we know John Carpenter loves an underdog. In Big Trouble in Little China, he gives us one of his most memorable. Jack Burton is the kind of hero only Carpenter could create. Brash, clueless, and ultimately more lucky than skilled. And yet, Carpenter plays with our expectations here. Jack isn't the traditional action hero who saves the day. In fact, if you look closely, Wang Chi is the real hero of the story. Jack is the comic relief sidekick who just happens to be the main character. And that subversion is pure Carpenter. Then there's the way Carpenter uses space. Whether it's the confined corridors or the sprawling streets, Carpenter knows how to make setting feel alive. And here he takes us into the underground to Lo Pan's labyrinthine lair. It's a place that feels endless and claustrophobic all at once. With tight framing and intricate set designs, it draws us into the action, and it makes us feel like we're right there with Jack and Wang as they navigate this bizarre, mystical underworld. And Carpenter's knack for blending genres. He doesn't just stick to one box. He blows the box apart. This film is part martial arts epic, part supernatural fantasy, part action comedy, part western, part monster movie. It's all over the place. Somehow, under Carpenter's direction, though, it all works. It's chaotic, but it's controlled chaos. And although Carpenter's style is all about balance, he knows when to lean into the spectacle and when to let characters and relationships take the center stage. Whether it's Jack's clueless charm, Wang's determination, or Gracie Law's sass, the characters are what ground the film amidst the magic and mayhem. So whether it's the vibrant visuals, the unforgettable soundtrack, or the way he just juggles genres with ease, Big Trouble in Little China is unique in Carpenter's style. It's unmistakably his, but it feels fresh and daring even with his already groundbreaking career. When Big Trouble in Little China hit theaters in 1986, it didn't make waves. In fact, it's generally considered a bomb. It brought in just over $11 million against a $25 million budget. Ouch, right? But here's the thing about Carpenter films. They have this uncanny ability to find their audience over time. And did this one ever. Fast forward to today, and Big Trouble in Little China is nothing short of a cult classic. Why the shift? Well, for starters, it's one of those films that's endlessly rewatchable. Every time you revisit it, you pick on something new, whether it's a subtle joke, an outrageous bit of choreography, or just another layer of Lo Pan's bizarre, mystical backstory. Fans of Kurt Russell, fans of John Carpenter, fans of genre-bending cinema have embraced it with open arms, and for good reason. This film is quite the experience. And talk about influence. Big Trouble in Little China has paved the way for so many films that came after it. Think about modern action comedy hybrids, Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, that perfect mix of over-the-top action, sharp humor, heartfelt camaraderie. You can trace a direct line back to Carpenter's work here. And don't even get me started on how it's influenced martial arts films in Hollywood. The choreography, the mystical elements, the larger-than-life villains. So many modern films owe a debt to this wild ride. And speaking of villains, can we take another moment here to appreciate the iconic Lo Pan? James Hong's performance is legendary. Whether he's delivering sinister monologues as the decrepit sorcerer or chewing the scenery as his younger, more menacing self, Lo Pan is unforgettable. His transformation scene with his glowing eyes and eerie laugh is magical. It's one of those moments that seared itself into collective memory of pop culture. And then there's the one-liners. Jack Burton may not be the most capable action hero, but he's definitely one of the most quotable. Like, it's all in the reflexes, and when they bash the back of your favorite head up against the wall, just everything out of Jack Burton's movie, his mouth is something that stays alive and stays with you and becomes part of your everyday dialogue. Over the years, this has become more than a movie. It's a cultural touchstone, which we've seen so many times from Carpenter. From cosplay to fan art to endless references on TV shows and other movies, its legacy lives on. And here's the best part. It continues to resonate with new audiences. So whether you're watching it for the first time or the 50th time, there's something undeniably magical about the blend of humor, action, and mysticism. So yeah, maybe it didn't conquer the box office back in '86, but in the long run, I think it's done just fine. It's a film that's endured, it's inspired, and it's still just as much fun today as it was nearly 40 years ago. And that's the mark of true impact and a true legacy. So let's talk about Big Trouble in Little China. This deserves, of all the films ever made, deserves to be called a cult classic. This is the epitome of what that is. It's a one-of-a-kind adventure. It's packed with thrills, laughs, some truly memorable moments. John Carpenter's playful spirit shining through in every scene. And you can't help but enjoy the wild ride. Sure, it might not be the scariest entry in his catalog. The Thing or Halloween, maybe Prince of Darkness hold that ground. But in terms of pure entertainment and fun, Big Trouble in Little China takes the cake. It's a genre-bending masterpiece that proves Carpenter could do more than horror. It showed that he could blend comedy, action, and fantasy in a way that's totally fresh. There's something about that. There was nothing here to take too seriously or get you feeling in a certain way. It was just about having fun. As for my score, this one again, it's a solid 7.5 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's a film that has earned its place in pop culture, and every time you revisit it, you'll discover something new to love. And speaking of exploring new things, next time on Real Talk, we're diving back into the mind-bending madness, into the dark, into the scary, into the Carpenter that we came to know and love early on with In the Mouth of Madness. If you thought Big Trouble was strange, just wait until we explore the surreal horror film that takes Carpenter's love of the genre to a whole new level. You won't want to miss this one. But before I sign off, I want to say thank you again for tuning in to Real Talk Horror. I hope you had as much fun listening as I did talking about Big Trouble in Little China. If you're not already, please be sure to follow me on Instagram and Threads at Real Talk. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, follow the podcast. It really helps us find others, and it keeps the spooky train rolling. So until next time, stay spooky, stay curious, and remember, in the world of horror, there's always more lurking just around the corner.